That's better. I got this mic, so hopefully it's got noise cancellation. You won't hear all the machine noise in the background on videos. Alright. So as we talked about, sorry, get sidetracked. Had a couple people asking about how to get images ready for doing or being able to use the pass-through doors. So I wanted to take a second to a couple minutes, hopefully less than 30, and go ahead and go over a couple ways to turn either an image or a vector, a raster or vector file, both, turn them into something that you can use for using your pass-through doors on your machine if your machine's too small to do a particular object. I'm not going to go over the specifics on how to set it up, because everybody's different in how they set up their pass-throughs. I'll give you some ideas of what I do, and maybe they'll help you, maybe they won't, but I'll give some advice for what to do, and then maybe in a future video I'll actually do something using pass-throughs. I just don't have anything up right now. I want to focus on the design part. So what we have here, or what I have here, are two images. One's a PNG, which is the colored one. Okay, and then I have a vector graphic here. I'm going to start out with the PNG, or the image, and I want to get it ready to engrave. But let's say that my machine is not big enough to handle this project in one pass, or at one time. So first thing I want to do is make sure that I can use this graphic. What the heck? I want to make sure I can use this graphic to engrave where it's not going to interfere with, the look of design. So, because if you engrave this right now and you try to process this, the gray is going to show up. You don't want that. You want to get rid of the gray or any outlying things that you don't want to see. So the first thing you're going to do, and again, this is all what I do. If you do it different, that's fine. This is just how I do it. Maybe it helps, maybe it don't, I don't know, but this is how I do it. So take the image, and I'm going to go up here to Edit Bitmap. When I go to Edit Bitmap, it's going to open up the Corel Paint, I believe is what it's called. Yep, the Photo Paint. Okay, once I have that up, I'm going to go over here to the masking tool, and I'm going to select the magic wand. And then I want to subtract. So I want to reduce the area, and by doing that and clicking outside of the motorcycle, you'll notice that everything within the motorcycle is outlined by this line. Okay. Now you can, depending on what you're wanting to do with it or how detailed you want the edges to be, you can go through and adjust the tolerances. And you adjust the tolerances up and down. Let's say we want this to be 5. It's going to change it's not going to be very drastic in some cases. See, now I took the tolerance up to 45. Now it's trying to pick out all the little everything that's not basically black around the edges. It's trying to pick up on those. So we don't want that. Usually I stay around 15. I stay around 15 on my tolerance. It's pretty close. Because you want it to be pretty much on the edge, but you don't want to have it to where you're kind of leaving a void between the edge and the outside. And then on the other hand, you don't want to be too much where you're picking stuff out of the design that you don't want to pick out. So anyways, now there's two ways to do this. Sometimes just going up here and hitting save will put it back on your table or on your Corel Draw. Sometimes it don't. I don't know why. I mean, you do the same thing on different photos and it'll work just fine. So the other way to do it is just to go to the image, right click on the image, copy it, go back to Corel Draw and paste it. Now your image is going to be in Corel Draw and not have the background in it. In this case, I mean, you could do some stuff to this to highlight the edges more. I'm just going through this real quick. I mean, we can go back and readdress it, or we can just go back all together and just Control Z, take you back. You can try it again to see what else you could do different to make it work better. But as far as this goes, like I'll do, let's do 0. I don't want any tolerance on it. I want it to be as spot on the line as possible. So there's no overlap or no gap, and then we'll see what happens with that. So save it, go back. Of course, didn't work. Go back, copy it, go to Corel, paste it. See, now it did the opposite. You don't want that to happen. So you go back, copy, paste. Come on now. It's weird. Sometimes it works the way it's supposed to, and sometimes it don't. And usually that has to do with there's something in the design that's connected to the outside. You see how the outer box is like that? Let's see, let's go back. Do that, minus. Okay. Now we got it. I think what it was is I didn't have this selected, subtract, so it was just having the normal mode, which will define any editable area. So let's see if it'll save this time. Nope, of course not. So again, go back, copy, paste. Now it's in there. So now the antennas are a little bit more defined than they were before. So I'm happy with that. And so now I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to put it back up here. Now I need to cut this image in half to do a vector. Now, when you do this, there's a couple things you can do. One of them is to go ahead and put a box. Put a box around it. Basically, you just go node to node, and it'll be right on the edge of the picture. Okay. Now, if you draw a line, you should be able to see a node or midpoint. So there's your midpoint. Now on this, you can have the laser put a circle. So you can do a circle let's just make it 0.5. So be a half-inch circle, or 0.25, and make it a quarter-inch circle. I want to make sure it's square, so I want to take off correction 0.25. Now I've got my circle. Now you take your circle and again find your midpoint, drop it on your midpoint. Okay, so now when your laser cuts, or when your laser pulses, you're going to have it pulse there. It's going to come up. What I'm going to do is, just so we're not taking up a bunch of space, this is in inches, so I want to go 0.02. Okay, 0.012, that'll work, whatever. I just want the dot to be small enough to where the laser picks it up. And we'll make that, say we don't want it to be filled, we want it to be an outline. So we'll make that an outline. Okay, so now you have a midpoint for the laser for when you're lining it up. First thing you're going to do is you're going to line up your whatever edge you're starting with, or wherever your edge is. You're going to line up your start point, which will be top left, top right, top middle, whatever. Wherever you put your orientation, you'll set up that. Then when you start the job, and I'll show you in Corel when we get there, this dot will be the first thing that the laser puts out. Alright, so that way you're starting up here. What you're going to do is you're going to slide your material up to that dot to where it lines up with your laser beam. And if you need to pulse again or something like that, or you can put a sequence of dots down here, because it doesn't really matter, because you're probably going to cut this out, or I don't know, whatever you're doing with it. If you're just cutting it out like I typically do, this helps. But otherwise you don't want to put anything in here, because obviously it's going to engrave in this area. You don't want it to show up on your design. So you have your midpoint. Now what you want to do is you're going to come over here to your cropping knife, virtual, and eraser tool, and you're going to go to knife. Alright, so with this, it doesn't auto close on cut, doesn't really matter, because it's a vector or a raster file or an image file, so it's not going to matter. But then what you'll do is you go to your midpoint again, click and hold down the left button, and drag your line all the way down to the next midpoint. Okay. Now what that has done is it's divided your image into two parts. For whatever reason, it's not showing. Oh, I see why. I didn't. You gotta get rid of the box. Sorry. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of this box. There. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a knife, and you want to make sure your polyline or two-point line mode is there. Now you're going to go back to your midpoint, and then straight down and find your midpoint there. Release the button. Now you have two pieces. You separate this. Now you have two pieces. Now you don't need to separate it like this, other than the fact that you might want to check just to make sure it cut properly. So now it's two identical pieces in the same spot. You got your midline, which is there. to line everything up. Now, if this piece is going to be a solid piece used for whatever, you want to make this, when you do the pulse for this dot, you want to make it light to where it just barely makes any kind of mark. That way you can sand it off if it's on wood. Which most stuff that you do through a pass-through is going to be on wood. You might do acrylics, and then you have to kind of figure out how you want to do it from there. But so now I've got this bitmap, or this JPEG split, and I'm just going to import it into Corel Draw so you can see, or into Already Works, so you can see how it's going to look. So now I just brought it into Already Works. Okay. Now, our blue, which is our midline dot, is right there. But since it cut out, it's taken up for, so I can get this right. So if you don't pull them apart, you're not gonna have to worry about this dot. I'm just doing because you're not gonna be able to get it lined up with that dot. But if you don't pull them apart, it doesn't matter. So that way you've got two separate images, and if we leave them as they were, we'll put them back where they were. Right. But now I want to go back ahead where I cut it. Now it's cut, and you can tell because you can see that faint line right down the middle. Okay, so now highlight the object and then put it into Corel Draw, or I keep saying it, into Already Works. And I'm using the macro tool up here to convert mine automatically into Already Works. But here's how it's going to come out in Already Works. It's going to have two separate images. Like I said, your dot is not going to matter. So now you got two separate images, and if you look at it, you find there's a spot there where you can see where it's split. Okay, then you do your scan. You want to output, however you want to output this, output direct, don't use independent. I guess you could. But then now you have your two halves. So you can highlight one, and then you can send it to your machine. Make sure your output's on. Alright, so I'm going to turn my machine on so I can see what this is doing. Alright. So now I'll send it to my machine. Oh, yep. Alright, and now look at it. See, now the issue we have is two separate things. So what you do, like I just did here, now you have the black bitmap and a blue bitmap. Now, when you're using pass-through, because you have to do this, you have to separate them. Because if you don't, it's going to go as one file with a split down the middle. And you don't want that. So what you do is you go up here, like I said, you highlight whatever area it is, you change the color. Now you have two separate colors. a blue and a black, a blue and a black. For the first one, for the front half, you want to turn the bitmap off because you don't want it to go out as a file. So then the only thing that's going to load is this front file. You'll do your front file, and then what you'll do is you'll come back and do your back file. So you'll just reverse them. Yes, no. You'll slide your material up to get it in place and go at it that way. Now, doing this as a bitmap is not the easiest way to do this, simply because the getting it lined up is going to be almost impossible in some cases, in most cases. There are other ways to do it, and it just depends. You got to kind of play around with it. I use the dot. That way, because most of the stuff I have, I'm cutting out anyways. So having a dot there outside of the field of what I'm engraving or cutting, it's not going to affect me either way. But again, it just depends on what you're doing. And I usually don't. If I have an image file that's that big to where I can't put on my machine, or even for a 1624 or something like that, it's not realistic. I'm just kind of showing you how it can be done. And I say it's not realistic because unless you have a super high quality image from the go, it's not going to come out that great. It's going to be distorted, it's going to be pixelated, and things like that. So this is just showing you how it can be done. And obviously you'll adjust your power and speed settings accordingly to however your machine is. So now we're done with the bitmap. I want to show you the vector. And the vector is a little bit more important because there's certain things you gotta do things a little bit different to get the vector to work. Right now I have a vector. First thing you gotta do is you have to you have to ungroup it. And by ungrouping it, you're allowing the computer to see all the details. Sorry, I'm just trying to watch what's going on up here. Alright, so first thing is ungroup it, which we just did. So now, in theory, we should be good to go. And I want to auto close anything that's open when I pull the images apart. So you want to click on auto close and go and find your midpoint, which is right there, and then come straight down to your other midpoint, wherever it is. There's your midpoint. So now we've just cut everything in half. So in an ideal situation, everything should come apart when I slide it. Okay? And if you notice, not everything came with it. And the reason for that is, let me put it back. Alright. So the reason for that is because you have to, everything in here has to have closed curves. If it doesn't have closed curves, then, or joined curves, it's not going to work properly because it's essentially, it means that all the lines, not all the lines are connected, solidly connected or welded or however. So you apply your curves, or apply join curves, and then come back to your cut tool. Same thing, cut, use the knife to auto close the cut, find your midpoint again. Where'd it go? There's midpoint. There's midpoint. So now as you see, everything's cut and sealed. It should be sealed off. Now, what's going to tell us if it's sealed off is when we go to highlight it, we pull it apart. Oops, I grab it all. Things at a weird angle. Come on now. Having that motorcycle and everything at opposite angle makes it kind of hard to select it. But now we pull it apart, everything comes apart. If you notice up here, they went ahead, they auto-closed. Everything looks good, right? But down here, everything auto-closed, but you have this extra line. And this extra line is not something that you want. So you go to your node or shaping tool, you click on it once, hit delete, click on it once, hit delete. Now everything's closed like it should be. So when you go, because here's what happens if you don't do the auto close. Alright. Come on. Right. Or if you don't delete the extra nodes, I mean, good point. Now I want to separate it. Alright, so now I want to separate it. So now if you go into RDWorks, by saving it DXF or whatever, you go into RDWorks, it's going to show you basically what you have. Now if you go to simulate, you notice how everything's sealed off and engraved. Now if you don't want it to be filled in like that, you want it to be the opposite. You don't want this part engraved, then you will come back, go back to Corel and get rid of those lines, and that should get rid of the engraving. So now the only engraving you're going to see is what's inside of the sealed areas here. So we'll go back to Corel or RDWorks and see what happened to that. So now you have the engraved part. And this is what it's supposed to look like. This image is supposed to look like. But we have to do one more thing. We have to go here, highlight, shift, highlight, and then come down here and make a cut for an outline. Now what you want to do with your letters, that's up to you. You can leave them for engraving, or you can make them to cut, so just you cut out letters. And that's up to whatever your flavor is. But if you do that, you need to make sure that you highlight this, Control V. RDWorks doesn't do it that well. Go back to Corel. So now I want this to be engraved, but I also want it to be cut out. So I'm going to black fill with the red outline. And what that should do is give you a black and a red, as well as the design. See, it's telling it to scan everything. Well, we don't want it to scan everything. I want the red here to be part of the cut. So now everything in red is going to be cut. Now if we go to preview, it should show that the wing life is a cutout. Everything else is a cutout. But if you want to engrave this as well, I don't know why it didn't pick it up, but so it's not working. Now a way to get around that is you can come back to here, make the letters themselves a bitmap, and leave the outline. Or what you could do is take this and we'll make this black. We're going to engrave it. Then we'll go Control V, so it'll put another one right on top of it. But we want this one to be red to cut out. And then I also want to make these borders red for cutout. We'll go ahead and take care of that. Now we can go back to Artie Works, and this should, if all goes well, come out the way we want. So there you go. So if you look close, you see the kind of greenish border line. So what it's going to do now is it's going to engrave these, and then it's going to cut them out, and then it's going to cut the motorcycle out. But you want to make sure that right now you have the cut on top. You don't want that. You want the cut to be the last thing you do. So you go down here, go to priority, hit 2, and it'll jump down to the last thing. So it's going to go ahead and scan everything, and then come back and cut. If you do it the opposite, when you cut something out and you try to engrave it, the air is going to blow around, it's going to shift it, and it's not going to come out right. So now on this, if you're doing a cutout like this, then again you can have your midpoint dot for reference. That way you can line everything back up with that dot as far as your laser, and it should take off right where it left. Now with this stuff here, there is no perfect science to this. I'm just showing you how to make them usable in different ways. How you actually set up your table and everything is completely up to you. Now what I like to do is pull this back up. What I like to do is use the bed clamps, which you see in the middle of your screen. These are part of the material hold down system. But I'll clamp those onto the blade, and now I have about a 1/2 inch material sticking up to use as a flat reference. Okay? So when you put your board across, you can line up everything that way. Now the tricky part comes is when you put it, or slide the board, or whatever it is you're doing down, having center support or a center reference. If you have another blade clamp available, you could slide it over the blade here, and that'll still give you the same gapping as if it was over here. You just got to be careful not to push too much on the inside, because the blades do buckle, or can buckle. So you want to prevent that from happening. And you do that by not shifting or not pushing too hard against the center to line it up. And then from there, you do your cut, you slide it, do your other cut or engraving, whatever you're doing, and in a perfect world, it should come out straight. But again, the way I do it, I mean, if I tried to describe the way I do it personally, I don't think people will follow along. I don't know if what I do is the right way, but what I do works, and it works well. So um, I stick with it. And I guess I told you the things I do. I use the dot to line it up, and so that way you can get the second half back to where the first half was. Now, you can do your dot in several ways so you don't damage your material. You can also, like I have these thin anodized aluminum business cards, test pieces, whatever you want to call them. I use them for doing tests on my fiber laser and stuff. But you can use this. It's really thin. Set it on top of your material and pulse it, and see where it hits in reference to where your graphic is. And that way you can line it up with that as well without damaging the actual material that you're using by putting a dot on it. But like I said, if you're just cutting it all out, it doesn't really matter. Just put your dot outside of the cut area, and you can do that. You can do that by simply going back to Corel. So you have your design. Now, what you want to do, and before I do that, let me go back to this. So in order to do this in two separate passes, you need to have it in two separate colors. Because if you don't, then it will try to engrave everything on here as it sees it on here. So again, back at Corel, before we do that, the other way to do this is to go through and highlight everything. And let's say we make it green. Right, so everything green, and take away your borders. Or you can do a green border and no fill. Right, so now you have a black, then you have this, which you have two of, remember. And then change your color to green. Make sure this one doesn't have the copper. So we'll go here. So you got your black underneath there. So what you want to do, highlight, order, move to back. Now, that should be this look. Anyways, you get the point. You'd have to move each one of these, which we can do. Alright, so then you come back and highlight all your black, because you want it to be green, so it'll cut with the same graphic, but you still want it to cut out. But on this, what we're going to do, just to make sure it's all separate, we're going to go through and make this its own color as well. So we'll make that yellow. Alright, then we're going to move that back in the spot. So now you got your green and yellow. Then you got your green, and you got your red. And this one here you can leave as is because it's already black. This is already black and the red is already there. So you can just go back to it, launch your RDWorks again. And now you have all these. So our yellows are cut line, so we want it last. And then the green is our engrave line, so we want it first. So what we have to do, because we're doing the left side first, I'm going to change this to number 1. This to number 2, and this to number 4. Okay. So when you output this the first time, uncheck these two. That way the right side of this is not engraved or cut. It's only going to cut the left side. And I see already it changes. That needs to be yellow as well. So this is what happens when you don't plan for these. But it's real life, the way things happen. So now, now we got everything, but we need to put this back up as number 1. Put this back number 4. Alright, so now when we do our output, it's going to engrave, it's going to cut. Then you're going to move your material, it's going to engrave, it's going to cut. So doing it that way, that's the easiest way I've found to do it. There are other tricks that you can use, but again, that's the one that I use, and it works well for me. I wanted to show something here. So that's that way. Now, if you're using AI or anything like that, I don't know how that works. But you could do, what is that? Something here you can do. I haven't used it in a while, long time. Oh yeah, if you ever get to this and you want to make a change, if you ever want to make a change, the password here is RD8888, and do that at your own risk. If you're not sure what you're doing, I wouldn't mess with it. But you can read it, and what this does is it will show you your total time with the laser, total process time, and everything else. Total laser time, total processing time, all your travels, and your main board. Now you can upgrade firmware from here. but you have to have it. You have to download it from um, Boss or Already Works website to update the firmware. So you just download it to a file, and then that's where you get it from. Now, there was, at least I'm thinking of the same program. I use so many different programs, it's hard to keep track of. Um, edit cut property. Nice little spelling error. Now I think I'm thinking of a different program where you could set it up for pass-through. There's a setting in one of these things. Enable feeding your manual input, so you can do the measuring and tell it, however far you want it to go. This one right there. But that I haven't messed with, so I can't give any inputs on how to use that. But that is a way to do it. And you can do the same thing on here. Just know your gap, your distance between here and here. Take a pencil or something and mark on your piece the center. Wherever the dot is when you start, because you can just pulse a quick dot and then measure the distance between here and here, and then that way when you move your board, you can move this up to it, or not to it, but by the distance, say 2 inches, you set your distance at 2 inches for the next cut, and it'll cut. Or if you're just using one solid piece, basically there's nothing to do. You can set your docking point, which would be a midpoint for your design, and then use absolute positions, anchor points, all that different stuff in combination to get different results. So, like I said, it's completely up to you how you want to do this. I'm just giving you ideas. Like I said, I haven't done this very often or recently, so I'm a little rough on it. But at least I've kind of given you some ideas on how you can go about doing it. And then if you have any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them along the way. Just keep in mind, I'm working during the day as well. Most of the time, while my machines are running, I can get in here and help you out. So if I don't get to you right away, I'm not ignoring you. I'll get to you eventually. And if need be, I'll come up with a video with the answer that you're looking for, or at least a direction, a little bit better direction that you can probably go in. But other than that, that's really all I got for this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. I know I went through a lot of stuff, a lot of different ways to do the things, and how to separate them and everything for Already Works and Corel and all that stuff. But if you watch this video, I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions about the video, feel free to reach out to me on Laser Me This, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you like what I'm doing here, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell if you're on YouTube, and that way you can see notifications when I go live and come out with new things. If you need anything for your laser, if you look below here, you go to tools and jigs for Boss lasers. You can see all the different stuff, or check out the shop up there. Um, if you want more information or to purchase. And again, as always, please feel free to ask questions when you have them. I hope everybody has a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time. And as always, laser like a boss.